And I'm joined live from Oslo in Norway by Professor KjetilTronvoll, who's a Professor of Peace Conflict Studies. Professor Tronvoll, thank you for joining us today here on A News. The situation in northern Ethiopia, particularly around the Tigray region, is very, very bad at this moment. However, there has been a ceasefire declared from the Ethiopian government side. What can you tell us about the situation generally?
Well, the ceasefire declaration, the unilateral ceasefire declaration by the Ethiopian government is interpreted by most international observers and diplomats as more as a declaration of military defeat. They were basically kicked out of the core part of Tigray region. Still, however, Amhara regional forces are present and occupying the western part of Tigray. Eritrean forces are also pulling out and to the northern part of Tigray, closer to their own border, but there are still Eritrean forces present in the region. The humanitarian situation is radically decreasing every day because as the Ethiopian military forces pulled out, they first stole all satellite telephones and communication equipment from the humanitarian agencies present in Tigray, making it extremely difficult to coordinate a logistical operation of humanitarian aid, as well as the two bridges crossing River Tekese, which is crucial, which kind of defined one of the front lines in the war. And the humanitarian aid agencies need to cross that river to distribute aid inside the famine-struck area of Tigray. By destroying these two bridges, it makes the humanitarian aid situation extremely challenging.
So over the last 8 months, we've gone from the Ethiopian government beginning this conflict against the TPLF, the Tigrayan leaders for the last 30 years in the region, and the terrible attacks on civilians that we've been hearing about. Has making this unilateral ceasefire, has the Ethiopian government now given up with its ambitions, or what do you imagine the way forward with them is now?
I think it was a reality check for them, obviously, that the TDF, the Tigray Defense Forces, managed in a rather short period of time to regroup and remobilize, so to say, and actually defeat one of Africa's, or two of Africa's strongest armies, Eritrea and Ethiopia. Abiy Ahmed admitted in his speech, which was referenced earlier in this report, that the people of Tigray turned against them, as that was a surprise, so to say. Obviously, this is a people's war, and everybody on the Tigrayan side is rallying around their self-determination rights, so to say. So it might look like, at least, that Ethiopia temporarily has given up the hope to reconquer Tigray, but the war is far from over.
Now, I know that Ethiopia is made up of many different tribes, so the Tigrayans are just one group amongst many. The situation, is it simply the Ethiopian government against the Tigrayans, or are the other tribal groups also having disputes, and how does that complicate the calculus of the region?
Well, this conflict has many dimensions and it can be interpreted on many layers. But one of the key features of it is the hope to balance power between the federal center and the regional governments. And here, the Tigrayan people are much more oriented around their self-determination rights, as they fought the 17 years of struggle in the 70s and 80s to enshrine that in the new constitution. So when Abiy Ahmed launched a kind of a new policy of re-centralizing power in Ethiopia in 2019, you had a pushback reaction from several groups, but the Tigrayans being more stronger on that point. But we see today, obviously, that the Oromia region, the biggest region and the biggest ethnic group in the country, They have an active military insurgency, and just earlier today, the two biggest opposition parties in Oromia came out with a statement saying that they reject the federal government, they reject the results of the recent elections, and they call for the establishment of a transitional government in Oromia. So it is an increasingly fragile Ethiopian state we do see, yes.
So this is obviously very worrying, given particularly the fact that you just referenced the struggles in the 70s and 80s, which led in the mid-80s to a huge humanitarian crisis, which as a young man I can remember people fundraising for. The Band-Aid concert was put in place to help the people of Ethiopia at that time. Is this history repeating itself, and how can politically the country be reunited, or is that just a pipe dream?
You know, as you said, if you have read the history of the 70s and 80s, you can read the same book today to understand the current situation, more or less. Yes, history is repeating itself. The 84-85 famine, which killed several hundred thousands of people, maybe as many as 1.5 million, it was a politically induced famine. The famine in Tigray today is a politically man-made famine by the federal government. 900,000 people are on the brink of starvation. 5.2 million are in need of humanitarian aid. And the political dimensions, the reasons for the conflict in the 70s and 80s are the same as they're fighting on today. The configuration or the understanding of the Ethiopian state, how it should be organized. Is a political solution possible, feasible? To be frank, I seriously doubt it, because the Tigrayan has said over and over again now, this is the last time we are interested to fight for our self-determination rights. Next is independence, they claim.
Well, it's a very serious situation, and the numbers, as you just mentioned, are extraordinary. The people suffering at this very moment that need humanitarian aid and it's not able to be brought to them. It's essential that this is resolved and the aid gets to them. Professor Tronvoll, thank you so much for joining us today on A News. I hope to speak again. Thank you.